Yo, this is MegaManFan, and you need to rock and or roll on over to Mr. MegaManFan's YouTube channel, because it's all that rush to make it happen. Peace!
Welcome back to the Retro Honey Adventures, as introduced by MegaManFan. Today we are testing games that I didn't previously have in my GameCube collection before recent Retro Honey Adventure pickups, starting with Journey to the Purple Planet. And since I know almost nothing about this game, I'm going to look it up while we are doing this viewing of my footage from testing it. Journey to the Purple Planet. Not so easy to type while you're doing a voiceover at the same time, but I'm managing it. A 2005 action-adventure video game developed by Monkey Bar Games, published by Global Star Software, and powered by Vicious Engine. Wow, that sounds vicious. Let's see what that's all about. Vicious Engine is a game engine offering functionality for rendering, sound networking, physics, gameplay, scripting, and lighting. It was developed by Vicious Cycle Software. It supports GameCube, Wii, WiiWare, Xbox, Xbox 360, XBLA, PlayStation 2, PSP, PlayStation Network, and Microsoft Windows. Wow, quite a list of games that use the Vicious Engine. 300, March to Glory, Alien Syndrome, Curious George, Deadhead Fred, Spy vs. Spy, Eat Lead, The Return of Matt Hazard, Flushed Away, Puzzle Quest, Minute to Win It, Despicable Me, Earth Defense Force, Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures 1 and 2. There are a lot of games that seem to use this engine. But back to Journey to the Purple Planet. The game was released for GameCube in North America October 13th, 2005. Later in PAL regions, December 16th, 2005. A PlayStation version was released in PAL regions on December 2nd, 2005, and later in North America on February 9th, 2006. An Xbox version was planned but canceled. That means somewhere out there, maybe, there's a prototype. Who knows? Something could show up somewhere on a site that collects prototypes if somebody does enough digging. So this just appears to be a collect-a-thon style game where you wander around and pick up things, and then once you've picked up enough things, you unlock the next area. So actually, a surprisingly competent game for a tie-in to a popular animated TV show. You never know what you're going to get in a game like this, but the fact that I just did a Mario 64 slide down the hill says, hey, not bad. They actually put some thought into making the gameplay engaging and fun for more than just the youngest of audiences. Which, by the way, thanks to the Children's Online Privacy Prevention Act, I should tell you this channel is intended for those above the age of 18. If you're not that age, ask a parent's permission to be watching Mr. MegaManFan, because my fucking videos aren't for you, sorry. It's just not. Even though that was Dora the Explorer, this is an adult collecting video games. And this video game is NBA 2K3, which sadly will undoubtedly feature the late Kobe Bryant, who we all remember passed away on January 26th in a helicopter accident. So it's unfortunately tragic to look back at these NBA games now and see him in them, but he's going to be in a whole lot of games because he dominated the NBA like almost no other from the late 90s through the 2000s into the early to mid 2010s. He will undoubtedly be remembered as one of the greatest basketball players of all time and a pioneer because he actually went straight from high school to the pros, to the point that the NBA had to basically rewrite the rules on what kind of eligibility you could have as a basketball player. They didn't want too many more people jumping straight from high school into NBA without going to college first, but Kobe Bryant was so talented, he could pull that off, and very few other people could. Now, to me, this kind of feels like a Dreamcast game that missed being on the Dreamcast because that system folded. But however, I feel that's not actually the case because it was released October 7th, 2002 for the GameCube, October 8th for the PS2, and October 9th for the Xbox. Published by Sega, though, so, like I said, it does feel like a Dreamcast game. Developed by Visual Concepts. Like previous games of the NBA 2K series, Allen Iverson is the cover athlete. But you could see Kobe Bryant wearing his old number 8 in the footage that I took as I'm playing a quick game here just to make sure that it works. So we'll move on to another game. Next up we have Nicktoons Unite, which I was disappointed to find was not in an authentic GameCube case because there was no memory card holder, but Dora the Explorer Journey to the Purple Planet didn't have an original case either, so must just be something about those Nickelodeon games. At least both of them were boxed with instructions, so I'll take what I can get. It's better than having a completely loose disc without any cover art or any manual or anything. I collect GameCube games complete. I only take something without a manual if it's a bargain, and I'm only going to take something if it's a loose disc if I absolutely have to. I feel like there's no excuse for not having GameCube games be complete when they came in a plastic clamshell with a place to hold the disc and a place to hold the manual. It should have never happened. But we all know the reality of the situation is it does happen because people throw things away for no good reason. Even if they came in something that was meant to keep them together, they still separate it apart. Anyway, Nicktoons Unite is also known as SpongeBob SquarePants and Friends Unite in Europe, probably because they don't have Nicktoons over there. It's a 2005 video game featuring characters from SpongeBob SquarePants, Danny Phantom, The Very Odd Parents, and The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. You can control the 4 characters as they work together to stop an evil plan concocted by villains from each character's series. An Xbox version was planned, but canceled in development. And that also means there's probably another Xbox prototype floating around out there somewhere. Now, there's a long exposition here. I'm going to skip the exposition. I don't think it's necessary to listen to this whole thing. What we have here is, unsurprisingly, another collectathon. You run around in a 3D environment, you pick up the things you need, and it unlocks the next area you can get to. But at least this one, if you have 4 people and 4 controllers, you can work as a team and all 4 play together. So there is that much of a gimmick to it, but other than that, there's not a whole lot to this, except for some trailers. Barnyard, SpongeBob SquarePants, Nick Picks DVD Volume 1, obviously for the fact that those probably all have copyrighted Nickelodeon content. I am not going to play any of them in this test. We're going to move on to the next game. The next item on our agenda today is Pac-Man Fever, which does have the original case and an instruction manual, so it is complete in the box. This video game was developed by Mass Media and, of course, published by Namco because they own the trademarks and the copyrights and the intellectual property to all of the characters featured here. It was released for GameCube and PS2 on September 3rd, 2002, with the GameCube version only being released in North America. I guess that means we got an exclusive. Players move about on a virtual board, with the object being to reach the end of the game first. So what we have here is essentially a Mario Party ripoff with Pac-Man characters inserted into it. Or I should say, Namco franchise characters, but Pac-Man being the lead featured character. And it's not as if this isn't something everybody with their own IP didn't do. It's not like there isn't a Sonic Party game. It's not like there isn't a Shrek Party game. Everybody tried to rip off the Mario Party series. It was the first, it was the best, and it continues to dominate the genre, but Everybody else had to at least try to get a piece of that party game pie. Unfortunately for me, most of the games in the minigame board here seem to be locked behind progression in the actual board game mode. So the only one I'm going to do for this test is Fruit Mash, and there is not a lot of skill involved. There are fruits that randomly appear in front of you, and you just hit the button to smash them. And there's no incentive for hitting the button faster. Your smash rate is not tied to your button presses. The only advantage you can gain here is by smashing which fruits are worth more points. And it doesn't even tell you ahead of time which ones are worth the most. So it's kind of just dumb luck. You can't improve your way through it by hitting a button any faster or knocking your opponent over so they can't hit it. It's really bad. And I suspect that's the quality of the party games on here in general. There's no challenge and a lot of dumb luck and RNG involved. So I don't think we need to see that much more of Pac-Man Fever. We've got options for music and sound effects, and that's about it. I think we should move on to the next game. This next one is a game I had been wanting for a while, but I was waiting until I could get a good deal on it, and I finally found a copy at the Pop Culture Exchange for a price I was willing to pay. Second Sight is a science fiction adventure stealth video game developed by Free Radical Design, published by Codemasters for GameCube, PS2, Xbox, and Microsoft Windows. Players assume control of an American parapsychology researcher who wakes in a medical facility with no memory of his past and powerful psychic abilities. He breaks out with these powers in order to uncover his past and involvement in a mission undertook with a specialist task force of the United States Marine Corps. The action is divided between gun combat and stealth, with emphasis on players making use of different psychic abilities to survive against hostile opponents and overcome obstacles and tricky puzzles. So it's basically Metal Gear Solid with ESP, which to me is not a bad idea. It might sound like I'm mocking it for that, but I actually think that's a pretty clever gimmick. And the game has been well received. It has gotten mostly favorable reviews, and apparently in 2018 THQ actually acquired the rights to the game so they could either release it or maybe even release a sequel. We may not have seen the end of Second Sight, and I wouldn't be sad of that because I think this is actually a really good game. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit from the opening cutscene here since the game itself wouldn't let me skip it. So you wake up tied to this bed, and you as the player could see what happened to the protagonist, but he himself is either blissfully or regrettably unaware of all the things that happened to him, but he miraculously manages to free himself from his confinement strapped to that hospital bed using his ESP, and then he begins to explore the area around him. And I applaud the game for using it as an excuse to teach you the controls. It tells you, you can do this if you're standing next to this. Like, here you can crouch. Here you can go into stealth mode. Here you can use your psychic abilities to unlock the cell that you're trapped in. It doesn't dumb it down, but it also doesn't leave you just completely bereft of any advice. It assumes the possibility that you might not have an instruction manual and you might have just popped this in, or maybe you're even playing it at a friend's house, and it will guide you as much as you need to without overdoing it so that you can understand the gameplay. And I like how you trigger your psychic abilities by looking at something, focusing on it with the left trigger of the GameCube controller, and then activating your ESP with the right trigger. I think that's very cleverly done, and it allows you to keep your hands on the controller on your directional stick and buttons without having to break away in some way to exercise your psychic abilities. This is a game I want to really delve into at an extended amount of time, but I'm just testing the GameCube pickups for this week's Retro Hunting Adventures, so I won't be doing the deep dive here today, but Second Sight is one that I will definitely be coming back to and spending a lot more time in, so that might be something you can look forward to in the future. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next week for the Retro Hunting Adventures.